So I was talking to one of my students last night, and she feels like she's getting worse. So I see her on the mat, and I can tell that she's getting better, but she says she feels like she's going backwards instead of forward. And so we were talking about it last night, and this is a common thing amongst white belts. This is a common thing amongst a lot of people, not just white belts. A lot of people hit plateaus at times, and they feel like they get worse while their partners are maybe hitting a jump, while they're kind of staying in place. But the analogy that I used for, because I know what her situation is, she's starting to play in a technical way. And so the analogy I used with her is button mashers, or people that, like, when they start to learn how to play a game, they don't play by any sort of rules or rhythms, or they're just doing whatever they can, right? So for instance, if you guys have ever played like fighting games, like back in the day, fighting games, I haven't played video games in like 5-6 years. So, but fighting games, like where you're pressing all the buttons and stuff. Well, like a button masher, right, is the person that just presses all the buttons and their character's all over the screen, and it's very sporadic, and there's no like real rhyme or reason to what's going on. And a lot of times, that person that plays like that beats the more advanced player just because they're all over the place. And then what happens is once they actually start trying to like learn that character that they're playing, like learn the moves that they have and try to use them in sort of a meaningful or sort of purposeful way, then they get picked apart. It's like that in chess sometimes. Sometimes you'll play with someone that knows a little bit of chess, like they know how to move the pieces and know some like basic elements of strategy, and they'll start playing and they'll just move really weird, and it's kind of like it throws you off your game, because you're like, well, why are you moving that piece? I wasn't preparing for that. I was preparing for you to do this, because that's what most people are going to do, right? So they do all this stuff, and sometimes it can throw you off your game. And so it's like that when you start training. A lot of times in the beginning when you're training, you do a lot of dumb stuff, things that aren't going to help you, but it'll keep you alive for a little bit. For instance, when someone's passing, if you're new, if someone's passing your guard, a lot of times, I've done it, most white belts and most people that I've seen that started jiu-jitsu do it, they do the Wipeout Hug, right? So they pass around to side control, and instead of like starting to frame, they like grab and squeeze the person, and they just hold them as tight as they can. Now the advantage to it is that the person is not moving, but the disadvantage is that one, they're pulling the person's weight on top of them, so they're making the pressure worse. And two, they're not ever going to escape that way. You can't escape by pulling the person on top of you, right? Now the problem with this is now when they start to use the frame, right, now they're allowing movement, and now they're engaging with technique. And this is where you'll probably have the rub there. You'll probably feel like you start to get worse as you start to use more technique. And this is what's happening with my student, because I'm watching her and I can tell that she's getting better. I've seen her compete in tournaments and she's getting better, but she feels like she's getting worse. And it's not that she's getting worse, she's starting to play the game. So if you're a newer white belt and you ever get that sense where you feel like you're going backwards, more than likely it's not that you're going backwards. It's that you are now starting to take the techniques, you're trying to learn the movements, and you're trying to actually use them rather than just be all over the place, right? And you're starting to calm down, and you're starting to play the game. Just like the person playing the button mashers, right? When the button masher eventually plays the game long enough, and then they start trying to understand how the characters actually work, then they get picked apart, because now they're actually playing the game. Same thing with chess. When you get a person, when they actually start to play chess more and more and more, then they become, they start to engage in the rhythms and the patterns that, most people do with chess. And again, then they get picked apart by the more experienced player. Guys, talk to you next time.